We'll go ahead and get ourselves started here. Welcome everybody to the interagency briefing for information security management systems using ISO standards, and welcome to this. And we have with us Julius De Silva. Say hey, Julius.
Hey, morning everyone.
Awesome. It is a blustery day here. We're just talking about it here in Washington, D.C., so we appreciate you guys being here. And you don't even have to go outside to a meeting. So we welcome folks from the Department of State, the VA, NOAA, GSA. If we missed you here, we apologize. There's a lot of folks that have registered, and some are coming in late, so we appreciate you guys joining us. And this event is not affiliated with or endorsed by any agency and is provided to the audience for informational purposes only. All participation in this briefing is voluntary, and any engagement of government personnel like yourselves is not an indication of endorsement of or commitment to purchase from any vendor, including us. So now we can actually talk specifically about and roundtable on these things. If you have any questions, you can open that panel on the right-hand side and you can ask those questions to us. And you can also raise your hand by clicking that, and we'll be able to include you in the conversation. So if you dialed in on the phone, make sure that you enter your audio pin so we can unmute you. That's one of the things about the system. And you can also shoot a question to govsupport@QMII.com. Sorry, getting tongue-tied here. Finally, if you don't like the way that Julius and I look today, you can make us disappear altogether. If you'd like to make us a little bit larger, you can grab the control bar and make us bigger. And with that, why are you all here today? Let's ask the question for the poll. I am here because we need a better process for meeting the ISMS requirements that are coming down, if you haven't seen them already. We've never heard of ISO 2001 and interested in learning more. You know about ISO 27001 and interested in how it can help. I have other process improvement needs, or I know QMII does great process improvement work, and you're here because of that. Any one of those is fine. Let us know why you decided to show up here today, and we'll make sure that we address specific issues that you have. So go ahead, and we'll keep this open for just a little bit. And just so that we know we're not here alone, 60% never heard of ISO 27001, and 20% have, and then the other 20% are interested in how this applies to your requirements. Fantastic. We appreciate you being here. As far as what we're going to cover today, we're going to tell you a little bit about QMII, and we'll talk about specifically what's coming down the pipe as far as federal initiatives and why this is important to you. And applying the ISO 27001 framework, we'll get into some questions and answer session, as well as avoiding the gotchas, my favorite part, and procurement options for if you would like to proceed with in being able to find some of the services that are available here. Julius, tell us about QMII and what we're doing in the federal space, as well as how we got started in this world.
Thanks, Dave. QMII has been around for 30 years. In fact, since 1986. We started in Britain and then came over here to the United States, and we've been incorporated here since, I believe, 91. And our expertise is in management systems that drive process and performance improvement. And to this effect, we do quality management systems, environmental, information security management systems, and we look to put in place a system that will help processes improve over time, make life easier for people as they work. We're headquartered over here in Ashburn, Virginia, and within reach of most of the clients that we have in the federal realm, but we also work across the globe internationally and across CONUS as well. Our system conforms to 9001 and 14001, so that gives our customers the assurance that we're delivering a quality product. And we are experts in management systems, like I said, including 27001. We are also a recently certified SBA 8A business and DBE, but to that SBA 8A, we bring this expertise of 30 years, so we are not a new SBA 8A firm as far as experience or knowledge is concerned. We are also a minority-owned business, and we do have a GSA schedule for the following MOVIS number, the SIN numbers over there.
Awesome, very good. And as far as history, a deep and wide history throughout the federal government in both civilian and military DoD agencies. Anything in particular you'd like to highlight here as far as some of the improvements that we've had?
We've done management systems across the board, like I said, and we always focus on improvement. But you know, we had put in an ISO 9001 improvement system for the U.S. Coast Guard, and that actually, for one of their divisions, won them the Alexander Hamilton Award for improvements of 46% in their process work and flow over a period of just 1 year. And you know, that is almost like a world record of 46% improvement. Most organizations just try to strive for 2 or 3% improvement in a year.
Awesome, and there's several different examples of those. So as far as what it is that you all need, my biggest information security need is for your management system, that is, dealing with a current IT issue, and that could be something that, you know, data breach or something like that. The framework to consistently identify risks, and that's something that Julius was just talking about. Revamping our current processes, educating stakeholders on ISMS requirements. That's something that we've heard from folks as well, and training personnel to ensure adherence to standards. These are some of the key areas where folks wind up and agencies need to have additional help. So go ahead and pick that for us and let us know what it is that's most important to you as far as your information security need for your systems. We're split 50%, but to another 25 educating and 25 for training the personnel. Great. We appreciate you guys participating in that. We'll make sure we address those issues. So why are we here as far as some of the reasons why the initiatives are being created? Let's talk about this need for a risk management framework and for security and the repeatable management cost-effective process. There's some of the things we're going to talk about today. Anything you want to kind of seed this conversation with for this, Julius?
As far as the risk management framework, that's, you know, more what ISO 27000 about is, you know, identifying your assets, what are the risks, prioritizing them, and putting in place. But what makes it different from a lot of the others is that it enables the system to get management buy-in from the top level all the way down, including regular processes for review and delivering the same output consistently, including whether it be that management commitment or it may be assessing the risk to your assets as they may be. But like the second bullet says, you know, it's a repeatable, manageable, and in you know, we'll see in the future slide, some slides coming up here, that the costs involved were so great, and so being able to do that effectively time and time again will actually result in costs being reduced over time.
Excellent. And it revolves around the rest of this, understanding the key assets and managing essentially what you're going to be doing with that information and making that available. Here are some of the initiatives that have come down over the past several years, but specifically the latest one was dealing with a memorandum from the President dealing with fiscal year 2016 and 17. So this just wrapped up, and it was established to ensure the consistent government-wide performance and dealing with and trying to help increase, because of the increase of the number of information security incidents. These are the data breaches, these are the hacks, these are the things that we've seen on the news, and these incidents show us that we have got to get to a place where we strengthen our practices, policies, and governance, and that's where the procedures and the policies and the implementation of these to improve our systems revolves around. This resulted in July 2016 dealing with the management as a strategic resource, and it provides a foundation for the planning and budgeting governance of these resources so that they can meet the requirements, specifically to the FISMA metrics. If you're not familiar with FISMA, we'll be providing you with information on that as well. But ideally, it's getting to a place, again, setting the standard and managing and reducing the cybersecurity risks. And that revolves around identifying, protecting, and detecting, responding, and finally recovering, because sometimes bad things happen. We have bad folks that are trying to get our information and trying to get into our systems, and we know this because we see it on CNN and Fox News, and we see it, we get read about it in the paper, and these are the types of things that really create a challenge for folks in the federal space. Specifically, let's talk about some of the cybersecurity breaches of this past year. Some of these are really incredible. OPM, obviously, a lot of the folks here are affected or were affected by that because you are public employees in the federal government, and it impacted over 21 million folks. Then we have wild things like teenagers that are hacking into these major databases and gathering information. Then we also have the IRS with a data breach, which creates a huge problem in being able to make sure that our information, especially our tax information or personally identifiable information, is protected. And finally, the last one is dealing with some of the DoD oriented things where probes, where drones were being hacked, right? So these are some of the issues that we see, and these pop up big time in the major news organizations, and that's not where we want to be when we're talking about our agencies. Here are the top 3 causes for the data breaches in 2013. I know this is a couple of years ago, but it's still the same. Hackers accidentally, and then you accidentally making information public. A lot of that revolves around the policies not being adhered to or not being clearly understood. And the theft of or loss of a computer drive, this is goes back all the way to the VA, where they had the huge breach, which really wasn't even that big of an issue, but it was a policy thing. And you have somebody that's really trying to do something good by working from home, but it wound up making a huge problem, ultimately dealing with $24 billion to correct those breaches. This is huge money that's spent to correct these data breaches, and it's impacting the ability for agencies to spend. I was just talking with some folks for the DOJ last week when we're looking at a particular project and saying, hey, where can we, the problem is we've just been informed that we don't have the money because of the data breach. So data breach takes money from existing programs and future programs. So we want to make sure that we do this. So how does this affect you? This affects you personally. It could, in your agency, public exposure is the #1 thing, and the loss of agency reputation. We don't need any of this. None of us need any of the loss of reputation, and it becomes difficult for you to meet your mission objectives, just like I was talking about Department of Justice, not being able to fund things now because of a situation. And then you have more procedures. This is what happens with you personally doing your job, more procedures and more information. I have to hear this, that, and the other thing, and that creates personal anxiety and creates the inability for you to deliver personally for your position and increase stress. So these are the types of things that happen over and over again as a result of these. And if you take a look at this diagram, this is kind of the wheelhouse that we're operating in, and we want to improve our informational systems through. It starts with the president and goes out into each individual agency, whether it's civilian or DOD or in some instances justice. So you look at this and you say, all right, how can we best implement the strategies and to be able to meet these requirements and make this work for our agency so that we can protect our data and we can keep the bad guys out and make sure that we're not compromising our systems inadvertently and not even knowing. So here's where we get into the ISO 27001. Tell us about this, Julius, and why it's important to know how this standard operates and what it can do to help meet these requirements, especially in information management systems.
So, Dave, just before we go on this, we must understand what is ISO. And ISO is basically the International Organization for Standardization. And really, they chose the acronym ISO to mean equal, such that if someone wants to put an information security management framework in place, they don't need to go about trying to find out what do we need to do. They have it in front of them as far as using ISO 27000. It's an internationally accepted standard. It's not mandatory. They're voluntary. So an organization, just because they put in place a framework, does not necessarily have to get certified to an ISO standard. Now, having said that, ISO 27000 provides the best practice, recommendations on how information security can really be managed, and it talks about the management of the risks of through controls being put in place. Like we read about the data breaches that accidentally took place. This can be prevented by putting in the adequate controls, but you want to identify and put in place the controls beforehand rather than once the non-conformity has already occurred and the data breach has, the data has already accidentally been sent out. And this goes into, taking into place the context of the overall information security, including your interaction with other agencies, stakeholders, your vendors, suppliers. You can flow down these requirements to them. IBM is such a big corporation, and they are ISO 27001 certified. But it is a similar design as management systems, such as for quality assurance for 9001 and environmental protection under 14001. So there are a lot of commercial agencies and a lot of even government agencies that have integrated management systems that take into account all these health and safety, environmental, and information security objectives and merge them together to create an integrated management system, really.
Awesome. And a lot of this revolves around the risk model, right?
It does revolve around the simple plan, do, check, act cycle. We do it every day in our lives. We decide we want to go to work, we make a plan on how we're going to get there, we go through it, we make sure we put checks in place so we reach work on time, and then we go through the act cycle the next morning, say, hey, maybe I got to leave 10 minutes early so I can reach there. And all these management systems are based on the simple plan, do, check, act cycle. However, oftentimes organizations forget to go back to the drawing board at the plan stage, and when something goes wrong, they make a quick fix. Someone is fired, a quick documental procedure is done, but no one really goes down to the root cause of seeing, why was this asset not identified initially? Why did we not consider these risks? Did we not have the correct subject matter expertise going in? Were the folks not trained well enough going in? Were the correct controls not put in? You have to go back to the drawing board, and the use of this cycle of the plan, do, check, act cycle repeatedly results in continual improvement over a period of time where the controls become more effective, the process tightens, and there are less breaches. People know what they need to do. They're motivated to do it also because they have management buy-in.
And that leads us right to this next one, which is the smoking volcano. One of my favorites, by the way. This is awesome.
Absolutely.
Smoking volcano. So tell us what this means.
Oftentimes systems fail is because management has not bought into the system. And when you don't have management buy-in and the management is not committed from top down, it trickles down to the lowest level. And so we see when the system is not there to form that connect between the top layer and the bottommost layer, you often have the policies and the visions driven from the top down, and the folks at the lowest level think they're doing exactly what the highest, the CEOs and the CIOs and everyone want. But in effect, they may not be doing that because the information has not been correctly conveyed down. They may have feedback that they want to send back up to the top to say, hey, maybe we can try this or do it better this way. And everyone has an opinion, not an opinion, but has an idea or a suggestion for improvement. They recognize an opportunity based on their past experiences and even on their present experience. But oftentimes these don't get fed back up to the top so that action may be taken. People are aware of certain risks. They are aware of a possibility of something going wrong, but they say, hey, no one asked me, why should I talk about it? And so this gives an opportunity for that system to connect back and so that little piece you see that the gray, cloudy, gaseous area is where the system goes in, and the system will then identify the risk to make sure you get satisfied customers on the other end, really.
Awesome. And I love that because it applies for both getting buy-in from the top and getting feedback from the bottom, because where the rubber hits the road is where you need to get that feedback up so that adjustments can be made, right?
And we have seen that systems often fail because SOPs and instructions and policies are driven down without getting any feedback from those at the lower level. And so sometimes you may have the management committed at the top but no buy-in from those at the bottom, because no one has ever bothered asking, is this actually how you do things? Have you faced any problems? No, it's someone external comes in, they give an idea, it's implemented across the board without getting feedback from those at the lower level. And that's where a well-implemented system really helps.
Absolutely. And answering the question of why. A lot of times nobody ever tells you why you're doing it. And that's one of the reasons why we're here doing this as well, is to be able to let you know why this is happening and why it's important, right? So why ISO? Why go down that particular quality management system approach?
Yeah, so whether it be quality management system, whether it be an information security management system, whether we take any management system, once we put it into place, basically you give confidence to your stakeholders that the system will deliver as promised. And that's the key, because you're identifying the inputs, you're identifying the controls you want to put in place, you identify the competence of the personnel that you want to hire, you make sure your hiring process gets the right people in the right amount of time. As need be, you can look at the hiring process to do that. You put in place the required infrastructure as far as hardware, software, whatever is needed, so that the risks are effectively identified well ahead of time. They are well evaluated, and it's important that even the risks being evaluated are evaluated by competent people, because you can have identified all the risks, but if they're not evaluated well enough, you may not address them well enough. So
or not have them in the right order, right?
Correct. So it's important you have the right competent people to evaluate and address the risks, so that your short-term and long-term strategies may be met. And sometimes the short-term gains help the long-term gains by, you may have an expense now, but over time it will reduce costs considerably for you. But really, controlling of information security and your data, as it may be, is integral to everything you do as part of a business, because everything else can be going well, but if the security is not protected, like you can have a fantastic organization that's performing so efficiently, everything's being driven out in a few days, the environment is being protected, but if your secure information is not secure, if your supply chain is not secure, like the whole we as a country, as the US, were doing great. We had great economy, great outputs, environmental, we are the leaders in climate change, everything, and then we had 9/11 as a security breach, and it changed everything for us, right? It changed everything. So that's critical. You making sure that the security of your information, the security of your system is taken care of through a process and through a systematic method and a process-based approach.
So and like you mentioned, a lot of this is short-term, but also applying to your long-term goals. Not just, and don't sacrifice your long-term for making short-term gains either. So it's the building block approach. Love that model, the building block model, to get to where we want to go. So here's three of the key factors for you for process improvement, and the importance of what it means to implement this type of a process. So tell us about this.
Well, like you said, Dave, it is the building blocks for future improvement when you use an ISO approach, because what it does, it helps you capture the risks ahead of time. It helps you address them, and if something goes wrong, it helps you do a proper analysis of what went wrong, so that you can take action, and all this gets captured as lessons learned. I mean, the U.S. has not become the greatest nation in the world by not learning from their lessons and capturing them all the way. I know that they, working with the U.S. Army, they have a center for lessons learned, and they have been learning and capturing lessons right back from World War I, when they have been capturing and learning and getting better and better at everything that they do. It also helps you, but a system helps you capture organizational knowledge. Oftentimes we have that one key person who knows everything, right? The go-to person, say John Doe, but everyone says, hey, why don't you go ask John? John will know how to address the issue. John will know what to do. And putting that system in place really captures that organizational knowledge on paper, so that when you have that person who leaves, your system is not really dependent on that person. Your system is able to sustain and move ahead without that person even being around. If they fall sick, if something happens to them, God forbid, but your system is not going to fall down. Another key thing is the no blame system. And what happens is, when you have a system put in place, you ask, as an organizer, ask how did the system fail the individual and why the system failed the individual, not who did something wrong specifically. Because if you just fire and put a new person in place, you're going to probably have the same mistake again if you don't figure out why didn't that person do what you trusted them to do initially by putting them in that place.
So true. And that no blame system, keeping it issue oriented and making sure that that you're not alienating the people that you need to fix it. And I love what you mentioned about the law identifying the weakest link in the chain. Not that John doesn't have the answer, or that John, that John's the weakest link, but for crying out loud, all of a sudden, like you said, John is no longer there. What are you going to do when you need an answer? So being able to document that so that they know what the system is supposed to do or what they're supposed to do within that system, right? Great.
Yeah,
Great
and like I said, once your system is doing well, it drives, it drives employee morale, and we spoke about this as one of the issues coming in here. And it also enhances stakeholder confidence. So people know that, okay, fine, if they have my data, it's going to be safe with them. You're not worried about that. But most importantly, the system forces the management to take accountability for the effectiveness of the system. So they can't delegate that accountability to someone else. They can't say, oh, that person's responsible. Whoever is the leader has to say, no, I'm responsible. You report back up to me, but I want to make sure everything is going the way it should go. And they are forced to, when I say forced, the system ensures that they review it at regular intervals and provide the outputs, the action, the resources needed to improve going forward.
Yep, and Todd just said you cannot delegate risk, or you can't offset risk. So true. So
yeah.
True.
There are different methods to how we can address risk, and sometimes management, depending on who they are, they may decide to accept the risk. They may decide to accept the risk sometimes, not in case of information security, but in other cases where they may accept a risk for a potential opportunity that it may present.
Sure.
Like a business risk that you take sometimes.
Sure. Risk versus reward. So the other piece is, and this is a lot of color and a lot of busyness, but this is kind of a layout of the process and how you can see the dependencies in the process, right?
Yeah, so these process flowcharts usually make it easier for personnel to see where they fit in the system and what they have to do. And it allows the organization to show the team or the organization, as it may be across the board, working together to achieve a common goal or a common objective that is usually set by the manager. The manager will set an objective, but it sort of gives them a high-level 30,000, 40,000 foot picture of where do I fit into this process. Mm-hmm. Now, coming in, if you put in an ISO 27001 system in place, it doesn't mean you have to take everything that you have and trash it or throw it out the window. True. But this gives you the overall big picture, and we see where everything else that you currently have fits in, and where there is something missing, doing a gap analysis, we would then fill in those gaps as needed. So it's small change, it's minimal, it's nothing big that we come and throw everything and say, hey, no, this is a new system, take this and use this.
True enough. And so how come this winds up working so well when you apply this to the information management and the security of those systems? How come it works so well?
Well, because risks are identified timely. People are more, you get better buy-in from the employees, so they're willing to report things up quickly as they see it happen sometimes, because there's better management buy-in, so you get better results as far as when the system is reviewed as a whole. The management provides the outputs, the management understands everything, and security becomes everyone's responsibility through effective training, so there are no breaches, and they understand where they fit in the system, how they contribute, and how their lack of contribution can result in something disastrous. But the processes are going to help identify controls, help put in barriers in place to prevent something going wrong ahead of time. And like we said, it's really going to, it may even reduce your time to hire.
Yeah, that's right.
We'd done a briefing on that, but having a good work environment, a safe, secure work environment, where you feel where everyone feels happy to work. They're not worried about something going wrong, like we spoke about the different stresses. It may actually even help that.
And that's exactly right. So that's awesome. So we're opening up the questions. If you can open up that panel or raise your hand and let me know what you have. We have a couple of questions here that we can ask. So here we go. We already have SOPs, manuals, and instructions in place. How can all this help? Great question. So they already have this SOPs, standard operating procedures. I would assume that's what's meant by that.
Correct, and we would have to come in, like I said, and take a look at that, but like I said, we're not going to throw everything out the door. We're going to see what you have, what's existing, and we're only going to make the small changes that are needed. However, even the SOPs that you have now go into a system where all the SOPs get reviewed, people are able to provide feedback, the feedback gets acknowledged and commented on it. The system works to improve the SOPs over a period of time. Many a time people are doing the SOPs, sometimes they may know something's wrong, but they're not encouraged or don't feel encouraged enough to even report it back up saying that, hey, this is wrong, we should change something here.
And how long before I begin to see tangible results?
Well, that's a it depends question really, Dave. But it would depend on the scope of the project, how big the system is, and how committed the people are. The commitment of the management right down to the lower person makes a huge difference. It could the difference could go anywhere from like 6 months to 2 years sometimes, but it really depends on the commitment of everyone going in.
And what's wrong.
Yeah, and the criticality, or the size of the system, etc.
Exactly. How can I tell where is the system process failing? So how can you tell where the process is failing?
These are some really good questions. but what the system does, it helps you capture data and trends, so you can analyze the data effectively to sort of find out beforehand sometimes, and that's why you're going to analyze these risks, capture the risks, use subject matter experts, get the data initially to try and do the best possible that you can do to prevent the risk. And if there is and you're going to put adequate controls in place so that things don't go wrong along the way, and when need be, you may have 2 or 3 or 4 barriers in place before that have to be breached for something to go wrong. But that's how the system will then identify and help you to improve over the next time. Like I said, if something goes wrong, you can throw a person out, but that's not the solution. You have to find out how did that person get in that place in the first, the first time over. Because
most of the time it's a system-oriented failure, and I love that. Me personally, I love to look at issues as opposed to place blame.
Right.
Defenses come up, and you can't really improve from that. So next question: how can this work when we do not often get buy-in from the workforce, and they only view this as an extra documentation? Wow, that's an awesome one. How can you get this when the workforce is like, okay, here we go again, right? How can you do that?
Well, one, the documentation is going to be minimal because we're not putting in a big change in place. So, the documentation will be minimal. But we have seen through experience that when everyone from the bottommost level is involved in the process and how this whole system works, they get better. You get better buy-in, and although you have all the SOPs, although they have all this documentation, they feel more committed now because they feel like a part of the success of the organization.
True. Really. And that's one of the things that in the volcano example, being able to get the buy-in across the board, not just at the top, not just driving things down on the bottom, creating that environment of, oh, here we go again, right? So that's awesome. Okay, here's one. Do you do anything other than ISO 27001?
Yeah, so like I said, we do the majority of the ISO standards out there, but we also do process improvement, continuous process improvement tools, training. We do, apart from consulting, we do a lot of training as well. But we do the information security management system of 27001. We also do information security for IT services, which is ISO 20000-1. And then the main standards: 9001 for quality management systems, 14001 for environmental. And remember, the 9001 system can be applied to any process for improvement, even if it's non-information security. There's 28,000 for global supply chain security. We had done that recently for the U.S. Army. And there's a whole, you can just pick a ISO system, and we probably do it, apart from leadership oriented courses such as conflict resolution and effective communication, etc.
Sure. So this is more of a, will you supply the presentation slides? Yes, we will do that. We'll have a follow-up recap email. We'll talk about that in a minute. And I think that just about does it. Nobody has their hand up, so we'll go ahead and move on to the next question, which is, I expect an information security management, whoops, sorry, wrong one. So we'll launch that poll. I expect a requirement to help out with the ISMS information security management requirement when, either immediately, coming up very shortly in Q2 2017, these are fiscal year, by the way, Q3, Q4, or not sure. We'll close that out. We'll get right back here and come to avoiding the gotchas, one of my favorite slides, and that is not to get into the cookie cutter approach, not saying, hey, this works here, here, and here, let's just put this process in place. There's nuances that are associated with every type of process improvement, and it's looking to that dialogue across the board, right? So small changes, not taking and doing these huge changes all the time. Small changes generally work better, and look for that continuous improvement model that Julius was talking about, implementing that across the board, going back and looking at it over and over and over again so that you continue to improve. And this will get a quick transfer of ownership to your management. That's what you really want. Make sure that you're looking to get that to get it implemented and ownership to your management, so they take accountability and responsibility for it. And then you, as far as folks that you want to hire, verify their past performance. And one of my favorites is establishing and using BPAs, because they give you faster access to solving problems when they happen, sometimes even before they happen. Some of the planning pieces, hopefully, because of the desire to avoid these major issues in the future, we're actually doing proactive things before things happen, as Julius said earlier. So access to industry knowledge and federal experience and expertise becomes available to you right away. So with that, we'll talk about some of the procurement options. We are a GSA contract holder, as Julius mentioned early on. Also, we're 8A certified. We got that earlier, just a couple of months ago. Fantastic for everybody who needs to do anything, either competitive 8A or sole source. And one of the biggest things that we've found that is most important for folks is knowing that we're qualified first, that our qualifications, we've been doing this for many, many years, so our qualifications speak for themselves. It just so happens that we have a great tool to be able to purchase from us now. So there's our information. If you need any other type of set-aside help, then you can certainly reach out to us, and we will assemble a partner that makes sense for you. And so with that, what could you use some help with before we jump off of this here? And do you need help with process improvement in your agency? Understanding more about ISO 27001 and how that can help? A specific IT system management issue, establishing a BPA to meet those requirements, just like we talked about, or something else? Let us know what it is that we can help you with, and we will be answering. There's a couple of other questions that are coming in that are specific that we'll be tossing back as well. So with that, let us know what we can do for you. There you go. And we'll just jump right back into this. Briefing follow-up will include links to the initiatives and memoranda that we talked about, the presidential memoranda, the presentation, the PowerPoint, and a video link, as we were asked earlier. We're also assembling the Q&A documents that we were just talking about. If you have any additional ones, please feel free to send those over to us, and we'll make sure you get included. The purchasing options as far as your GSA and prime partners, and the response to your specific needs that you send us. We also often send out sample SOWs. If you have a specific need, we will definitely be able to supply you information that we've seen or incorporate it into other scopes of work with that. And with that, we want to wish you the happiest of holidays, and we really appreciate you joining us today and spending a few minutes with us. Hopefully it's been productive for you. Julius, any parting comments before we let these folks go to their holiday?
Yeah, just wanted to thank everyone for their time this morning and wish you and your families a happy holiday.
Very much. Thanks again, and we will see you next time.